Okay, so as promised in class, this video is going to teach you about coterminal angles. So in class, we had graphed, let's see, that 450 degrees. This was the one where we had to start off here on the x-axis and make a full 360 plus another 90. That was our 450 degrees. You should have that in your notes. All right, now if I erased the arrow on that angle, it would look just like a 90-degree angle. Okay, and 90 degrees and 450 degrees are not the same angle. You can ask a skateboarder or a snowboarder. That is not the same movement to go 90 degrees as 450 degrees, but they do land at the same spot in standard position. So we call 450 and 90 degrees coterminal. Okay, and that just means when we draw them in standard position, their terminal sides coincide. Their terminal sides coincide. All right, so that's all we're going to do is to start off with an angle and find coterminal angles to it. Okay, so just as an example, so we're going to find two coterminal angles. Okay, so we're going to start off with 60 degrees. All right, so I'm going to draw 60 degrees in standard position. So 60 is closer to 90 than it is to 0. We'll keep with our convention of drawing these angles in blue. There we go. So there's my 60-degree angle. All right, and I want to draw another angle that's going to land in exactly the same spot, but that isn't 60 degrees. So I could kind of take a page from the 450-degree angle. I could say, well, why don't I just do a full revolution and then go another 60 degrees? Okay, so option number one would be to tack on an extra full revolution. So I could take 60 degrees and add on an extra full 360 degrees. Okay, so that's going to be 420 degrees. Okay, so 420 is coterminal to 60. All right, and let me draw my 60-degree angle again. So there's my 60-degree angle in standard position. Okay, I actually could add another 360, so I could like do the 420 and then add another 360. Okay, so I could do that. I could add 7 full rotations. I could keep adding 360 all day long. Or the other option would be to travel backwards. Okay, to travel clockwise. Okay, so that would be a negative angle because we're rotating clockwise. And then to figure out its degree, I could say, well, let's see, together 60, the blue angle and the purple angle make up 360. Blue angle's using up 60 of those degrees, so 300 of them are left over for the negative angle. All right, so that was kind of just thinking through how many degrees there should be, but if you want to think a little more exactly about that, what I really did was I took 60 degrees and I subtracted 360 degrees from it. If I do that, I get negative 300 degrees. Okay, so that's essentially saying take your 60 degrees and then add a negative full rotation that way. Okay. All right, so essentially the way you're going to find coterminal angles you're just going to add or subtract a full revolution, 360 degrees. And you could do this repeatedly. You could add 360 degrees 7 times, and you're going to end up in the same place. It's going to give you a coterminal angle. All right, so let's do another example of that. We'll find 2 coterminal angles to negative 150 degrees. Okay, so a coterminal angle, and I'm not even going to do this by drawing this time. You can take negative 150 and add a full revolution. Okay, so that would be 210. You can take negative 150 and subtract a full revolution. Let's see, so that'd be 510, negative 510. Okay, and you could continue adding and subtracting. So these are 2. I only asked you to find 2 coterminal angles, but you could keep doing that. You could take that 210 and add another 360. Okay, so that'd be 570. You could take that negative 510 and subtract another 360. Okay, and that's going to be negative 870. All right, so when I ask you to find 2 coterminal angles to any angle, there's actually an infinite number of correct answers. All right, so we're going to do the same thing for some angles measured in radians. Okay, so if I start off with the angle 7 pi over 4, again, without drawing, we are going to add or subtract a full revolution. Now in degrees, that meant adding or subtracting 360 degrees. 360 degrees is the same as 2 pi. We drew that 2 pi angle in class if you want to kind of go back and look at your notes. So this is the same as adding or subtracting 2 pi. And just like with the 360s, you can add as many times as you want or subtract as many times as you want. Okay, so I'm going to take 7 pi over 4, and I'm going to add 2 pi. All right, so without converting to degrees, I'm going to have to think of this as 2 pi over 1 and get a common denominator so I can add those fractions. So I'm going to multiply this by 4 over 4. And that gives me 7 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4. And I get 15 pi over 4. Okay, so by adding on a full revolution, involved a little bit of common denominatoring, but we got 15 pi over 4. I could subtract a full revolution, 7 pi over 4 minus 2 pi, and I would do the same common denominator thing. So 7 pi over 4 minus 8 pi over 4. And that would give me negative 1 pi over 4. All right, and again, those are just 2 of the many correct answers. I could continue adding 2 pi to the positive angle or subtracting 2 pi from the negative angle, and I would get more coterminal angles. All right, let's see. Let's do one more. We'll do, how about pi? The angle pi, if I want to find coterminal angles, I just take pi and I add a full revolution. Okay, that one's pretty easy, 3 pi. I can take pi and subtract 2 pi. That would give me negative pi. And I could keep doing this all day long. I could keep adding 2 pi to the 3 pi. So if I add 2 pi, I'd get 5 pi, 7 pi, keep adding 2 pi, 9 pi. Kind of get the idea that any odd multiple of pi is going to be coterminal with pi, and that's true. You know, so you could kind of think maybe 153 pi would be coterminal to pi, and it would be. And then negative pi, I could continue subtracting 2 pi. So if I subtract another 2 pi, I'd get negative 3 pi, or negative 5 pi, or negative 7 pi. And we get the idea that we could have any odd multiple with a negative on it is also going to be coterminal. So anything odd, negative times pi is going to be coterminal to pi. So you can see there are an infinite number of correct answers to these questions. You just have to find 2 of them. All right. And at any time, if you want to, you can instead convert. So I could say, instead of pi, think of pi as 180 degrees, now that you know how to convert back and forth, and then just add 360 degrees or subtract 360 degrees. Okay, I think this is actually more work than doing it in radians. So what would that be? 14, carry the 1, 540. And this one, 360 minus 180 is negative. Well, 180 minus 360 is negative 180. But if I gave you the original angle in radians, you then need to convert this back to radians. Okay, so you'd have to convert to give your answer. 540 is going to be that 3 pi, and negative 180 is negative pi. So if you're more comfortable in degrees, you can convert to degrees, find your coterminal angles, but then you have to convert them back to radians by multiplying by pi over 180. All right. Okay, so there's coterminal angles, and that should get you through your 5A homework.